Steve Jobs was ousted from the very company he co-founded in 1985. Just try to imagine that feeling, being forcibly removed from your brainchild, the company you poured your every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears into, from the ground up. And then, in 1997, something truly miraculous happened. Steve Jobs returned to Apple. This time, he was no longer the impetuous, inexperienced leader from before. He was a seasoned master of strategy, design, and uncompromising vision. Jobs' return irrevocably changed the game. What can you learn? Apple's story, from garage to global success. Almost everyone knows Apple, right? I mean, some of us carry iPhones, work on MacBooks, or wear Apple Watches. But not everyone really knows, how this global tech empire actually began. It all started in a small garage, with a wooden workbench, and 3 young guys, none of whom even had a college degree. Yet, within just a few decades, they built one of the most valuable and influential companies in history. Apple didn't just sell products. No, they changed how the world communicates, works, listens, and dreams. So here's the real question. What can we, as entrepreneurs, creators, or simply dreamers, learn from Apple's story? Today we'll dive deep into how Apple was built through bold vision, painful failure, relentless reinvention, and what timeless business lessons we can all take from it. Welcome to Global Hustle Stories, your source for real success lessons from the true journeys of the world's biggest corporations. Get inspired by entrepreneurs who overcame massive challenges and dared to dream big. To uncover those lessons, we first need to understand their startup story. To truly understand Apple's monumental impact, we first have to meet the individuals who laid its very first stones. None other than Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Their names still echo across Silicon Valley and around the world today as symbols of a unique partnership. The founders, visionary meets engineer. Jobs and Wozniak, 2 seemingly opposite personalities, yet they complemented each other perfectly, like 2 sides of a revolutionary coin. Steve Jobs, born in San Francisco, adopted by a working-class family, showed a unique way of thinking from an early age. He was a natural questioner, constantly challenging norms. Jobs was a visionary, an artist at heart, operating within the world of technology. He didn't follow a traditional university path, instead dropping into select classes. At Reed College, where he was captivated by calligraphy, a seemingly minor detail that would profoundly influence the elegant typography of the Macintosh. Jobs was obsessed with beauty, simplicity, and the user's experience. But he was also notoriously demanding, pushing for perfection to an almost infuriating degree. And then there was Steve Wozniak, affectionately known as Woz. He was a born engineering genius, a true electrical engineer who could visualize complex circuits in his mind and bring them to life with just a few precise movements. Wozniak simply loved tinkering, building, and solving technical problems. For the sheer joy of creation, he wasn't particularly concerned with money or fame. He just wanted to make amazing things and share them. It was Woz who single-handedly designed and built the prototype for what would become Apple's first personal computer. They met through a mutual friend, and Jobs, with his sharp business intuition and extraordinary persuasive ability, immediately saw the limitless potential in Wozniak's brilliant technical mind. Woz, in turn, found in Jobs someone who could transform his often dry technical inventions into products that truly could change the world. In the mid-1970s, computers were still massive, incredibly expensive machines found almost exclusively in large corporations. The idea of a personal computer for everyday people seemed utterly outlandish, almost insane. But that's exactly the audacious vision Jobs and Wozniak shared. Wozniak, fueled by his boundless passion, had already built a compact computer. It could connect to a standard TV and keyboard. This creation would later be named the Apple I. His initial thought was to simply give away his designs for free to local computer clubs. But Jobs saw something far bigger. With his keen entrepreneurial eye, he recognized a golden opportunity. Staring them in the face, Jobs convinced Wozniak that they should form a company to sell these computers. With incredibly meager funds, sourced from selling Jobs' old VW van and Wozniak's beloved scientific calculator, they officially began their venture. Their headquarters? None other than Jobs' parents' garage in Los Altos. In that cramped, modest space, surrounded by tools and the distinct smell of electronics, Jobs and Wozniak poured countless hours, days, nights, even weekends, into meticulously assembling each Apple I by hand. Every circuit board was carefully soldered, every tiny chip precisely positioned. It was grueling, manual, painstaking work driven by pure passion and sheer willpower. They weren't just building computers. They were laying the groundwork for a dream that would redefine an industry. The story sounds romantic, right? But the reality of starting a business, especially one aiming to disrupt an entire industry, is never a smooth ride. This was particularly true for an idea as seemingly crazy as the personal computer. Their first major hurdle was a severe lack of capital. They had to scramble for every single dollar just to purchase components. Often they relied on their own meager savings to keep operations afloat. Convincing skeptical investors was equally difficult. Who would bet on two young guys working out of a garage, trying to sell electronic boxes that most people had no idea what to do with? The second challenge was the immense pressure and inherent loneliness. When you're attempting to invent the future, you often find yourself isolated. Not everyone could grasp their radical vision. There were moments when Wozniak seriously considered giving up due to the relentless work pressure and significant personality differences with Jobs. Jobs, of course, was notoriously demanding and uncompromising, which frequently led to internal conflicts and tension within their small team. And of course, there was competition. Even though the concept of a personal computer was nascent, other companies were already beginning to stir. They had to be faster, more innovative, and truly differentiate themselves just to survive. Yet it was precisely within these crucible of challenges that Jobs' unwavering tenacity and visionary leadership, coupled with Wozniak's technical brilliance, were truly tested and ultimately forged. They learned a fundamental truth. To truly go far, sometimes you have to attempt things others deem utterly impossible. If the Apple I was their humble yet pivotal beginning, then the Apple II represented their first true market breakthrough. Jobs and Wozniak instinctively understood that for personal computing to become truly mainstream, it needed to be more user-friendly, more aesthetically pleasing, and genuinely easier to interact with. Wozniak engineered the Apple II with the revolutionary capability of color graphics, an incredibly advanced feature for its time. Jobs, meanwhile, obsessed over the design of its plastic casing, ensuring it was a complete, polished product, not merely a circuit board. The Apple II became a runaway success, not just because it was a technically superior machine, but because it perfectly captured the spirit of a new era. It wasn't exclusively for scientists anymore. It found its way into homes, schools, and crucially, small businesses. The groundbreaking spreadsheet software, VisiCalc, running on the Apple II, transformed it into an indispensable business tool, effectively paving the way for the personal computer revolution as we know it. But Jobs was never one to rest on his laurels. He was relentlessly searching for what was next. One of the most pivotal turning points in Apple's history was Jobs' now legendary visit to Xerox PARC in 1979. There, he witnessed the future unfold before his eyes, the graphical user interface and the computer mouse. Xerox had invented these concepts, but astonishingly failed to grasp their immense commercial potential. Jobs, however, did. He immediately understood that this was the definitive way to bring computers to everyone, regardless of their technical expertise. Jobs returned to Apple, consumed by this vision, and poured his entire being into the Macintosh project. He assembled a small, elite team of brilliant young engineers, pushing them to their absolute limits with his famous reality distortion field. The Macintosh wasn't just another computer, it was a profound statement, a declaration of independence for the user. With its intuitive GUI and revolutionary mouse, the Macintosh fundamentally altered how we interacted with computers, transforming them from complex, intimidating machines into something intuitive, easy to use, and as friendly as a helpful companion. Apple's iconic 1984 commercial, famously aired during the Super Bowl, was a marketing masterpiece. It boldly declared the Macintosh's arrival as a liberation, a revolution, against corporate conformity and technological stagnation. That was the explosive moment Apple truly cemented its place and reshaped the entire industry. However, the path of Jobs and Apple was far from a continuous upward trajectory. Right at the apex of their initial success, a deep-seated internal conflict unfolded. After the triumph of the Macintosh, Jobs, with his characteristic intensity, relentlessly plunged into new projects, maintaining his demanding and uncompromising approach. Yet, his autocratic leadership style, combined with mounting internal politics and increasing tension with Apple's board of directors, culminated in a truly heartbreaking event. Steve Jobs was ousted from the very company he co-founded in 1985. Just try to imagine that feeling, being forcibly removed from your brainchild, the company you poured your every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears into, from the ground up. It was a profound emotional wound, arguably the most bitter personal failure in Jobs' entire life. For many, such a setback would mark the end. But for Jobs, it became a hard-learned lesson and an unforeseen opportunity for rebirth. He was forced to confront fundamental questions. What truly matters to me? It was during this period of exile that Jobs rediscovered his deepest passion, creating truly great products. He founded a computer company called Next, and, crucially, acquired a struggling animation studio named Pixar, where he would go on to create groundbreaking blockbusters like Toy Story and fundamentally revolutionize the entire film industry. This challenging period, though painful, ultimately taught Jobs patience, humility, and most importantly, gave him the invaluable time to grow, learn from his mistakes, and profoundly refine his leadership capabilities. While Jobs was undergoing this personal transformation, Apple itself was faltering. In his absence, the company lost its visionary direction. Its products became stale and uninspired, and its market share plummeted. Apple was teetering on the very brink of bankruptcy. And then, in 1997, something truly miraculous happened. Steve Jobs returned to Apple. This time,